Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hi everyone, welcome back once again. Very focused. Agenda number 6, part B under discussion, application of IFRS 5. So let's start the video with the requirement. So first, read the requirement carefully. Use Exhibit 2 in accordance with IFRS 5. Discuss the impairment principle, which should be applied on the reclassification of trailer held for sale. 6 marks. But this component having 3 marks. 3 focus point. 3 marks question about subsidy trailer. Number 3, held for sale, not criteria. Here measurement. Requirement about something, measurement. Impairment principles. Must have to recall the IFRS 5. Once classified, held for sale, must have to measure at lower of carrying amount or fair value less cost to sell. So let's organize your mind with this structure. Number 1, make sure you have made a good plan. Even though 3 marks question, but always your brain should work in this manner. Number 1, time management. For 3 marks, you have 6 minutes. Rule 20-80, 20-80, 20-80, 20 for planning. 1 minute you have for planning. During planning, make sure you have read the requirement very carefully. That's already done. And we have already identified what the examiner wording and expectation, not the IFRS 5 principle, but the measurement and impairment rules. Now it's time to identify the facts inside the question. Quickly recall the facts inside the question and compose your mind. So students, this is what the window of details. Here exhibit 2 about trailer, and this last 3 lines. On this date, auto company and wheel company continued negotiation for sale of investment in trailer company and finalized the agreement. Trailer company met the criteria to be classified as disposal group held for sale. So that is about examiner already given that the criteria have met. You don't need to challenge. You don't need to write anything about the criteria of IFRS 5 for trailer. But you need to write or draft answer for measurement. Once IFRS 5 criteria met, then another part of the standard, how to measure. Lower of carrying amount or fair value less cost to sell. If fair, for example, carrying amount 100 and fair value less than 100, let's say 95, that means 5 value is impairment loss. So complete principle we need to draft here. So for planning, you have read the requirement, you have identified the facts. That means you have composed your mind. Very specific, this question about held for sale impairment rules, but planning aspect is not yet complete. Make sure this is the question about explanation, no calculation, explanation and application. Drafting rules, always start with basic explanation with your own wordings. Simultaneously connect with the case. Try to use the conservative approach, that applying the knowledge simultaneously, drafting the knowledge simultaneously apply with the case. So you will be able to save your time. Stick with the time management, that 3 marks, and you don't have more than 5 minutes. be committed that you have to complete your 100% paper of the SBR. So be strict with the time management. Lastly, before entering to the war zone, brainstorm what I will do for 3 marks, and the relevant and complete answer. First, I will start writing the basic principle that once asset classified held for sale must be measured at lower of carrying amount or fair value less cost to sell. This is what test of the impairment. If fair value is lower, that means there are some impairment loss. Next 2 points to drill down both of the values. Number one, carrying amount. So you have to mention at the date to report held for sale, carrying amount at impairment test date, we must have to calculate the carrying amount according to the original accounting standard. For example, I-16 applies 16 rules. Company policy for revaluation, apply revaluation. And any revaluation gain put up according to or report according to original accounting standard, that is revaluation reserve. Then you have to explain, compare the step 2, compare carrying amount with fair value less cost to sell. This is IFRS 5 impairment test. And if some impairment loss arise, if the fair value is lower, impairment loss arise, you have to report that impairment loss, profit and loss account, even whatever previous accounting standard you have done with step 2. But at any cost, with the step 3, all the impairment loss must be reported fair value through profit and loss account. That's the point. So students, if you are going to report, if you are going to draft your answer, so number one, I strongly suggest make a heading, and then whenever you are drafting, be committed whatever you have planned about time and about the brainstorming. Number one, you have to write the aspects of impairment test, the trailer as held for sale. Very simple statement. Asset classified held for sale must be measured asset classified as held for sale must be measured at lower of carrying amount and so on, fair value less cost to sell. And if fair value less cost to sell is lower, that means the impairment loss arises. Then you need to start the point individually. The carrying amount at the time of classification as held for sale. First, you have to mention the carrying amount must be reported with original accounting standards. Don't use the shortcut words, accounting standards. And you have to mention that any gain or loss about the revaluation with the fair value, with the revaluation reserve must be reported according to original accounting standard. And then final words, compare carrying amount with fair value less cost to sell. And you have to mention that any impairment loss report to the profit and loss account. Make sure that whenever you are drafting your answer, so not only putting the knowledge but also mention the name and the reporting date. So automatically answer convert with the application, explanation with the application. So this is what about the suggested answer. Number one, here the asset classified held for sale must be measured lower of carrying amount, fair value less cost to sell, and tested for impairment at classification of trailer at 31st March XX. So, for example, you are drafting your answer. So till now, here the bold, the explanation. But if you mention the case of trailer, here the case of trailer at 31st March XX. So that means you have connected with the case. So with the one statement, you have mentioned the knowledge simultaneously the application. This is what called conservative approach. An examiner suggests that use this conservative approach and save your time rather than one complete statement for knowledge, another complete statement for application of the knowledge. Connect with the case. So this is a very simple rule, and this ability you will be able to develop as practice as much. So next point, carrying amount at the classification date. So in accordance with the original accounting standard, and any impairment loss recognized P&L unless asset measured had been measured according to the revaluation amount of IAS 16 and 38. You can read it accordingly. But the final wording, compare carrying amount with fair value less cost to sell. And any impairment loss is identify the difference between carrying amount step 1 and the fair value less cost to sell. And this impairment loss must be recognized in P&L even for asset previously carried at revalued amount, because this is the territory of IFRS 5. This is the territory of IFRS 5. So IFRS, once impairment loss identified by comparing carrying amount with fair value less cost to sell, this is actually the territory of IFRS 5, and any impairment loss of IFRS 5 must be reported in profit and loss account. At last, now read and identify key points of the examiner comments. Final. In the case of trailer, exhibit explicitly stated the criteria for classification as disposal group held for sale were met. Second requirement, therefore, no need to discussion on this. The focus instead was on how impairment principles are applied upon reclassification. This is measurement. Most answer covered basic knowledge. Then an impairment review was required immediately prior to reclassification and subsequently. For us, this is important, the most important point. Fewer answer discussed means the quality answer the examiner expect here. Only fewer answer discussed how the effect of impairment prior reclassification dependent on original or applicable IFRS. So that impairment asset was revalued carrying amount first, reverse any revaluation surplus before impacting profit or loss. So that is the point about IFRS 5. If you have any confusion, you can ask me on by WhatsApp number even, or with the comment box. So thank you very much about this part of video. Now the next agenda point we will cover The part C, that's about the calculation with pre-populated worksheet. Thank you very much. Wait for the another video. Take care a lot. Assalamu alaikum.